Have you been thinking about getting a pet reptile? And are you unsure on whether a pet reptile is right for you? Well, before you commit to buying a pet reptile, I have 10 reasons for why a pet reptile might not be the best option for you, but also 10 reasons why a pet reptile could be a good option for you. So hopefully by the end of this video, you will be able to make a more calculated and sensible decision on whether or not to get a pet reptile. Now, reptiles can make incredible pets, but in all honesty, they aren't for everyone. So let's actually dive into the reality of being a reptile keeper, both good and bad. Reason number one, long-term commitment. A lot of reptile species can live for well over 20 years. For example, ball pythons, tortoises, boa constrictors, they all live over 20 years. Now, 20 years is a long time, let alone living longer than 20 years. So the real question here is, are you actually prepared to care for an animal for well over 20 years? If the answer is no, then a reptile is probably not the right pet for you. Reason number two, specialized care needs. A lot of reptile species need specialized temperature and humidity requirements, as well as adequate UVB lighting. Without providing these adequate conditions, their health will basically start declining. It's important to evaluate and also research into the species which you're interested in to see what specific requirements that you'll need to provide for that specific pet reptile. Now, if you feel like you'd struggle to maintain these conditions over 20 years, then a reptile may not be for you. So ask yourself whether you're prepared to maintain adequate living conditions for the specific species that you're interested in for over 20 years. Now, yes, there are a lot of species like leopard geckos, for example, which are nowhere near as difficult as other species like a chameleon. So you can look into something a lot easier like a leopard gecko, and you'll certainly find it a lot more easier to maintain something like a leopard gecko if you genuinely are set on getting a pet reptile. But this is definitely something worth keeping in mind. Reason number three, setup costs. Now, are you prepared to spend the money on the setup? I'm going to be completely transparent with you and completely honest with you. The setup for your pet reptile is most likely going to cost a lot more than the actual reptile itself. It's important that you don't cheap out on their setup or bodge job it to ensure your reptile's habitat runs smoothly and efficiently. If you don't think that you can afford the setup, then a reptile may not be the best option for you, but also you'll need to take into consideration the running expenses and not just the initial setup cost. So for example, you're going to have costs like heating and lighting costs, new substrate costs, new UVB expenses, and food expenses. So if you can't afford the initial setup and also don't feel like you can afford to maintain your pet reptile, then it's not sensible to go and get a pet reptile. Reason number four, limited interaction. Now, don't get me wrong, some species are a lot more social than other species of reptiles, as well as being a lot more active than others. And you also get some reptiles that really love handling, but then on the other hand, you also get some which don't like handling at all. It's important to ask yourself what kind of experience that you're wanting from keeping a pet reptile, and this can help you narrow down your options. But if you're looking for a cuddly pet, then maybe a reptile is not the best option for you. But if you're just looking for hands-on experience, then something like a bearded dragon could be a good option for you. It all really comes down to what you actually want out of your reptile experience. Some people aren't even fussed about handling, and if this is the case, then most reptiles are going to be a great option for you, especially things like day geckos. But this is definitely something worth keeping in mind, especially if you're a parent looking to buy your kid a pet reptile. It's not really something that you're going to have lots of cuddles with, like a dog, for example. Reason number five, difficult vet care. Yeah, this one is probably one of the biggest turn-offs, if I'm honest. Not all vets specialize in reptiles, and the ones that do specialize in reptiles typically tend to be miles away and also tend to be fairly expensive. If you feel like you wouldn't be able to afford the vet bills and the treatments, then it's probably a wise decision to not get the pet reptile in the first place. Just like us humans, reptiles can also become unwell time from time, so it's definitely worth knowing where your closest vets are that specialize in pet reptiles, but also evaluating how much it would probably cost if you did have a problem. But if you feel like you can't afford it, if something was to go wrong, then it would be sensible not to get the pet reptile in the first place. Reason number 6, live food requirements. Now, depending on the species of reptile that you want to keep, many reptiles have insects within their diet, and obviously snakes tend to have a rodent diet, so that's feeding things like mice and rats. Now, feeding live bugs and frozen dead mice or rats isn't for everyone. And a lot of people are freaked out by the bugs, or they're freaked out about dead rodents. If you're someone who thinks they can't cope with picking bugs up each and every week, or if you're planning on getting a snake and you feel like you would struggle feeding your snake a dead cute mouse, then it's probably for the best that you avoid species that have this within their diet and instead consider a herbivorous species. You can look into something like a Eurymastix or something like a tortoise. Both make great pets, but have a lot more simpler diets. And obviously you're going to avoid dealing with live insects as well as frozen dead mice and rats. Reason number 7, potential for escape. Reptiles are a lot smarter than you probably realize, and they are certainly extremely good escape artists. But most of all, they can be hard to find once they've actually escaped their enclosure. If you're worried about a reptile being loose in your home, or if you have a family member who would be petrified to find out that the reptile is loose around the house, then maybe don't get one. It does happen time from time, but trying to find your pet reptile after it's escaped its enclosure can be a complete mission in itself. So definitely keep this in mind because it could happen, and definitely be prepared for this, especially if you live with other people who are petrified of reptiles. They probably wouldn't appreciate it if it got loose and was roaming about the house. Reason number 8, housing space. Large reptile species require large enclosure spaces. The bigger your pet reptile gets, the bigger the enclosure is going to be. All species require somewhat of a decent size enclosure. So first of all, ask yourself whether you actually have the space for the adult size enclosure. If you don't have the space for an adult size enclosure, then I wouldn't get it. Alternatively, maybe look into a smaller species that requires a lot less space as an adult. So definitely take the time to actually have a good measure up before committing to buying a pet reptile. Reason number 9, bad smells and odors. Some species of reptiles have very stinky, smelly poop. You'll certainly experience the smell if you own a pet reptile. But also, not only will you smell their poo, you're actually going to have to clean their poo out of their enclosure. So if you feel like you can't handle this, then a reptile may not be for you because you will be cleaning poop up each and every week. In all fairness, not all species of reptiles have smelly poos. For example, like a crested gecko, you're not even going to know that they've had a poo most of the time. But it's definitely worth keeping in mind because this could be a reason for not wanting a pet reptile. I used to have an adult bearded dragon, and I used to get home from a long day at work and I would open my cabin door. And I kid you not, the second I walked into my cabin, I could tell you if Frodo, my bearded dragon, had had a poo or not. Now you can get this spray, which is the F10 odor eliminator, and this would certainly help mask the smell of the foul odor, and it is a really good spray. But like I say, definitely worth mentioning because their poo is definitely something that you're going to be cleaning frequently, so just keep this in mind. Reason number 10. Licensing, restrictions and regulations. Now, I bet you didn't know that some species of reptiles are actually illegal to keep in certain countries, or they require specific licenses or permits in order to actually keep them within that country. So you will need to do some in-depth research tailored to the country that you actually live in to ensure that you're not going to be getting a reptile which is illegal in your country, and also research on whether you would need different permits in order to actually actually keep it. So that's 10 reasons for why a pet reptile may not be the best option for you. So now I have 10 reasons for why a pet reptile could be a good option for you. Number 1, low allergen pet. Now, if you're anything like me and you're allergic to any animal with fur, like a cat, dog, rabbit, hamster, then you'll be happy to know that reptiles don't have fur and your allergies won't be kicking off 24/7. You're not going to have those itchy eyes or feeling like you've got a fur ball stuck in your throat, and you're certainly not going to get hives from touching your pet reptile. So if you are allergic to animals with fur and you do genuinely want a pet, then a reptile could be a great option for you. Reason number 2, lower maintenance compared to mammals. That's right, no need for daily walks, no litter boxes, just proper husbandry and a suitable habitat for your pet reptile. Keeping a pet reptile has extremely low maintenance compared to a mammal, because all you really need to do is regular spot cleans, i.e. picking up their poo as and when you see it, refreshing their food and refreshing their water, and then the occasional deep clean. So much simpler in comparison to keeping a pet mammal. Reptiles tend to be a lot more less maintenance in order to keep. Reason number 3, fascinating to actually observe. Watching a pet reptile hunt, explore, and interact with their surroundings is probably one of the most rewarding parts of being a reptile keeper, especially when they have those funny, clumsy moments. But it's fascinating to actually sit there and watch them move around and observe them, because by doing so, you actually realize how intelligent they truly are and how they pick up on things over time. Reptiles tend to be very curious creatures, and they are a lot smarter than people realize or give them credit for. Reason number 4, quiet pets. That's right, no loud barking or meowing or loud noises, which make them a perfect option for those who live in a flat or a small apartment. They're not going to be disturbing people too often, in comparison to something like a dog that barks all the time. Most of the time you can barely hear them unless they have made like a log fall over inside their enclosure. Then obviously you're going to hear a little bit of noise from that. I will say the only exception to this, I would say, would be frogs. A lot of frog species can croak or make noise throughout the nighttime, but for the majority of reptile species, they genuinely are fairly quiet, and most of the time, you wouldn't even realise that they're there. Reason number 5, educational value. There is genuinely so much that you can actually learn about reptiles, and in all honesty, it's a forever learning hobby. Things are always changing within this hobby through new discoveries, and there's always something new which you can learn about. And in all honesty, that's probably one of the most beautiful parts of this hobby. Reptiles are great for kids and adults who love nature, and you'll certainly learn so much from just keeping a pet reptile. But there's so many different species of reptiles, and in all honesty, it is genuinely so fascinating to actually learn about. Reason number 6, large variety of species. There are countless species of reptiles, from lizards to snakes to tortoises, turtles. There are so many different reptiles on our planet. And genuinely, there is a reptile fit for everyone at all different sizes, temperaments, and levels of care. In all honesty, the hardest part is actually choosing which species you would like to keep out of all of these options. Reason number 7, less space needed for smaller species. Honestly, this could be a great benefit for keeping a pet reptile, especially if you're someone who lives in a small apartment. If you don't have a lot of space at home, there are several different gecko species which you could keep, as well as small snake species which you could keep. For example, if it was a gecko that you were looking for, you could look into something like mourning geckos, crested gecko, a leopard gecko. You can even get really small day geckos, which are called Cameroon day geckos. And all of these require little enclosure spaces. And if you're someone who's interested in getting a snake, but don't have a lot of space, then maybe you could look into something like a sand boa or even a hognose snake, which again doesn't require too large of an enclosure size. Reason number 8, unique bonding experience. Now, a lot of reptiles do genuinely recognise their owners, especially bearded dragons, and all reptiles respond in different ways. You'll certainly have a positive experience bonding with your pet reptile, and I will say it can take time, But it's so rewarding when you know that you have a special little bond with your pet reptile, and especially when you know that they trust you. Reason number 9. Longer lifespan. A longer lifespan means that they're going to be a part of your life for a lot longer. I know people who got a tortoise around 70 years ago and still have that pet tortoise today. And isn't that just incredible? But like we mentioned earlier, most reptile species live over 20 years. And if it's like a lizard, most lizards live between 15 to 20 years. So as we've already established, you'll definitely be caring for this pet reptile for a long period of time. And they're definitely going to be a part of your life for a while. Reason number 10, aesthetically pleasing enclosure setups. Now this one is my personal favorite part. I love a natural looking enclosure. Being able to bring a slice of nature's beauty into your own home through providing your reptile with a natural bioactive enclosure is such a beautiful thing. Nature is such a wonderful thing, and having a slice of it sat in your home just really adds to the whole reptile keeping experience. So if you're someone who absolutely loves being in nature, having a slice of it in your home will certainly bring a smile to your face. But also, your pet reptile is going to absolutely love it. So there we go, guys. That is 10 reasons for why a pet reptile could be a great option for you. I hope you now have a better understanding on whether or not to buy a pet reptile. And hopefully this video has helped you make a more calculated, informed decision on whether to get one or not. Let me know in the comments if you are a reptile keeper, and let me know what kind of experiences you've had owning reptiles. And if you're not someone who has kept reptiles before, let me know in the comments what reptile you would go for if you could have one. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to follow us on social media. Just simply type in @CoopsReptiles. And yeah, I suppose I shall see you in my next video. See ya!